Let's talk heart to heart.
Hello and welcome. We are here on Let's Talk Heart to Heart, talking about spiritual things together. It's an opportunity to try to share about some of the deeper things of life. As the video that played for those who are watching live says, individuals with disability don't have the opportunity that other people have to express themselves spiritually for various reasons. We have some videos on the channel that you could look at that explain that a little bit in more detail, but we're glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about trouble and going to talk more about suffering. We're on this topic. We're just a couple months into these broadcasts, and we're planning to keep going. The heart of these broadcasts are in the comments below, so please do leave your comments during and after the video so that we can interact with them. Where we started in this process is the idea that everything has a beginning, has a starting point. And if we begin from the starting point of ourselves, that is dramatically different than beginning all of our philosophy and our worldview and our life approach from the Creator as the center point, as the beginning, as the start of things. And so we talked about that for about a month at the very beginning of this broadcast. Where we are now is we're in the process of talking about struggle, misery, suffering, the difficult things of life, and this is that big question why, which is one of the hardest, maybe the hardest challenge to theistic philosophies, to approaches. I come from a Christian perspective, but to watch this, and actually right now, as we're recording this, almost all of the listeners are also coming from that viewpoint, but we're trying not to be exclusive to that. We would love to have your input regardless of your viewpoint. I will be presenting biblical principles and what, at least how I understand Christian faith. But I'm not saying that I'm right about everything. I'm very interested in your input and your perspective. So even if you don't believe at all, if you're an atheist or if you have some difference in belief, very anxious to know about that. But we've been talking about why, and we've been considering this problem of pain. And last week I talked about there being two different types of struggle. I've been trying to get a word that works, or a set of terminology that we can use, because there's so many different terms for pain and struggle and suffering, and so there's trouble that comes from circumstance, and there's trouble that comes from evil intent. And these are both problems with a philosophy, a theistic philosophy, but there really are two very different types of struggles that we come across. And so we talked about that a little bit last week, which led us to the question, is misery a choice? And what we really meant by that is there some degree to which you make a choice in the midst of circumstance, or in the midst of being offended by people of evil intent, or situations of evil intent? Is misery a choice? So when we go to our comments, though, we find out that I'm still not using terminology that you all are comfortable with, that you like. And so everyone basically this last week wanted to do a better job. And actually, I think everyone did do a better job than I did last week on the show. So this idea of calling it misery and suffering, that didn't work out. But I think you got my point, that there is a difference. There is something that's put upon us, and then there's something that is from within us in the midst of these troubles. And so I'm going to start to use the term trouble, but look at your comments here. One person said that choice is the attitude about what's going on, or someone else says that it's our response. We don't really have a choice, but it's really our response to the things that happen. Others were fine calling it our choice. And one person said it's a choice, but it's actually only sort of a choice. It's a very difficult choice to implement. And so your comments are still got to the point of we don't have the terminology yet. So I'm changing it this week. I'm going to try the word trouble. And so let's move forward with that. So, but this is the heart of what I want to talk to you about this week. And I'd like your reaction to this. Why go through the trouble of talking about this? This is not pleasant. Struggle, trouble, suffering, misery, whatever you call it, it is not pleasant. It's very uncomfortable. And so why do we talk about it? And even though it's uncomfortable to talk about, I want to talk about it for two reasons. One, I think if you're a young person watching, or there are, maybe a better way of saying it is, there are a lot of people watching right now who are thinking to themselves, what's all the fuss about? I mean, there isn't that much struggle. I mean, yeah, we have some things going on in the world. Maybe the stock market's up or down, or maybe there's some sort of fear going on in the world, or some trouble that's going on, but it's not that big a deal. While others are absolutely devastated and stuck in a circumstance of trouble right now. I know that some of you who watch regularly are struggling right now, and so that's why I want to talk about it, because this is one of those taboo topics that doesn't get addressed. Not because people are trying to hide it, but it's because none of us really want to talk about it down deep. But yet I think it's really important because it's a huge challenge to us. If you're not struggling, you're going to struggle. If you're not experiencing acute trouble and difficulty and even what you would call misery, I'm sorry to tell you, but life brings with it misery, and at times extraordinarily intense. And so really the first step, and I guess this is to some degree what I want to say this week is, and get your reaction to, is to say, trouble's there. It's a matter of how we deal with it, isn't it? There really is trouble. And accepting it, accepting that life is not about avoiding trouble, but life is moving forward in the midst of trouble. Life is how we deal with trouble, the choices we make, the attitudes, our responses. That's where we are in this life. So that's why I've been pressing this, and that's why I'm going to continue pressing it. In fact, over the next weeks, I'm planning to do it to just continue, maybe for a couple of months still on this topic. I don't know. When I start to sense that we're wearing out on it, we'll move on, but it's always there, so it's pretty likely that we'll come back at some point as well. What I want to do is talk about a Bible verse that's that speaks to this idea of trouble. It's from the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 33. It says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." This is the summary of what I was just trying to say, that the biblical perspective, as I understand it, is that trouble is inevitable. Trouble exists. And it's all a matter of how we deal with it. And the Bible is trying to give us strength and these are the words of Jesus. He's trying to give us strength because he faced it. And so we don't face struggle without turning to a creator who knows what the struggle is like. And that's really the point there. So over the next 5 weeks, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about the different ways in which suffering might bring benefit to us. But over the next weeks, I want to talk about 5 ways in which trouble or suffering, but really how trouble can actually bring benefit. So I'm going to point out my own perspective, 5 benefits I think come, and there will be biblical verses behind each one of these benefits. But it purifies us, it strengthens our faith, it builds patience, it demonstrates truth, it shows God's sufficiency. Those are 5 ways in which it builds us. And so that's what our next few weeks are going to be. But what do you think about this idea that that it is inevitable, that we need to the starting point is to accept that? What do you think of that? For this week, would you please respond in the comments to this statement? We always had questions in the past. This is a statement. Would you give examples in which troubles helped build strength? Just some examples. They could be trivial examples. They could be deep examples. They could be personal. They could be just observations. But would you give an example or multiple examples or hundreds of examples as to how troubles help build strength? What's an example where trouble helped build strength for you or for someone else? That's what I want to challenge you with this week. As one of the mistakes I've been making in interacting with your comments, you all have been really faithful in making comments, and thank you for that. I've said all along, it's the lifeblood of the show. It doesn't move forward. But I haven't interacted well with them. And I guess part of it is this week, all I wanted to do was read your comment and go, wow, well said. And so instead of doing that, I just read it and thought, wow, well said. But I thought it to almost every comment, and it would have sounded weird for me to just say the same thing to everyone or to put a like on each one. But in the future, I'm going to start to do that. When I read your comment, I'm going to react to it in some way. I'm going to leave an emoji or make a comment. Most often, probably just leave an emoji. Then you'll know that I've at least read your comment. But I want to encourage everyone else to do the same. Would you please, before the show starts, while you're waiting for next week's show to begin, to just look up last week's show and read the comments that are there from last week? I always try to put them on the show, as I did on the slide where we talked about the reactions, but I can't put everything, and I can't cover everything that's stated there, and so many things are just eloquently put. So please react to one another. I think there's a lot of benefit in seeing what other people have written and even responding to what each other are writing. Let's make this a group event instead of just you and me, or just you or just me. Let's make it all of us looking through things. But thanks for stopping by this week. That's all we've got. Would you please respond in the comments? As always, we're going to play some contemplative music here at the end, show a few inspirational slides, but take the time now to respond to examples. What are some examples of trouble that help build strength? And until next time, thanks for stopping by. Let's talk heart to heart. Take care of yourself.